one time, a media hit did double duty. It was how people found you and how they discovered and decided that you were credible. A prospect saw your name in a trade publication, a journalist noticed that you'd been quoted somewhere reputable, a potential client Googled your company, found a few placements, skimmed your website, and thought, okay, these people seem legit. The placement was the discovery mechanism and the proof. Unfortunately, the world has changed. And that is no longer how visibility works. Now people ask ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini before they ever visit your website, if they do at all. They look on social media for recommendations, summaries, comparisons, and shortcuts. They form opinions and often shortlist before you ever get a click. If you do get one at all, they do all of that first, which means a single media placement, no matter how exciting, is rarely enough on its own. It may get you mentioned, but it does not automatically make you memorable. It does not automatically make you trusted. And it definitely does not guarantee you'll show up again the next time someone asks who in your space is credible. That is the real shift that we need to solve for today. The problem is not earned media. The problem is treating earned media as a collection of isolated wins rather than as a part of a bigger system. And even, dare I say, a peso model operating system. Because in an AI-shaped marketplace, lasting visibility is not built on a single greatest hit. It's built on proof that connects, reinforces, and compounds. On this week's Spin Sucks podcast episode, we'll discuss how to turn your earned media coverage into credibility that compounds over time, helps you show up in AI answers and summaries, and gains you the results you need beyond awareness and recognition.
If you're a communications pro who works hard, doesn't compromise quality, and gets the job done, welcome home. We'll share our tips, tricks, and stories, and together we will change the face of PR. Spin sucks, but we don't. With the Spin Sucks podcast, here's Gini Dietrich.
Welcome back to the Spin Sucks podcast. I'm Gini Dietrich. Before we get started, I have a little tidbit for you. Did you know that if you can't finish watching right now, you can subscribe to the audio version of this show? We're on all the platforms where you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple, or you can subscribe to our newsletter at spinsucks.com and get it in your inbox every Tuesday morning. Let me be really clear. This is not an earned media is dead argument. Not even close. If anything, it's more alive than ever. Earned media is still the proof you cannot buy. It still does something owned media can't do on its own, which is to transfer credibility from a source your audience already trusts back to you. You can buy reach, you can buy impressions, you can buy fancy shoes, you can buy all sorts of things, but you cannot buy the validation that makes people think, oh, well, if so-and-so said it, they must be legit. That matters even more now, not less. The challenge is that many earned media programs were built for a world where a single good placement could carry much more weight. If you landed the right story, that placement often did double duty. It helped people discover you and decide you were credible. Today, that same placement might still matter, but it rarely does enough on its own. Because random earned media placements that don't reinforce one another simply just create noise, not authority. One story is about your product launch, another is about your CEO, another is a trend piece you're quoted in, but it's not really a topic you want to own. Congratulations, you're visible, but you're not necessarily building anything sustainable. You're building a cookbook. And that's the real issue. The problem is not earned media. The problem is that earned media in that case stands alone, and we don't want it to stand alone. We want it to stand with its other media types, owned, shared, and paid. In an AI-shaped market, credibility comes from patterns, clear patterns, consistent patterns, repeated signals across multiple places that say the same thing about who you are, what you know, and why anyone should trust you. That's the difference between being visible and being believed. Earned media is still incredibly valuable, but when it's disconnected from a bigger story, something you can repeat, defend, and point back to, it becomes a moment instead of momentum. And that's where most teams get stuck. Visibility engineering is the deliberate practice of building authority and trust in a way that humans, search engines, and the AI systems can recognize, validate, and surface. Or Said a little less formally, it's how you make sure the signals about your expertise are clear, consistent, and backed up across the places people and machines look for proof. This isn't about content for content's sake. It's not, we need 200 blog posts, or we need to publish more on LinkedIn, or we need to react to every trend before the algorithm sneezes again. In an AI-shaped market, volume doesn't win, signals win. Credibility wins. And credibility comes from reinforcement. It comes from repeating the same thing clearly in multiple places. It comes from being specific about what you know, what you solve, and what you can prove. It comes from giving people language they can repeat, quotes they can reuse, and evidence they can point to without feeling like they're just parroting your marketing copy. That's why visibility engineering is a system, not a channel plan. Most teams are still running owned media over here or earned media over there, maybe some social in a third lane, and paid in yet another, all with different metrics and different assumptions about what success looks like. It's not a strategy. It's not. It's a bunch of separate programs occasionally bumping into one another in the hallway. It's a list of tactics. It's not a peso model program, and it's certainly not going to help with your visibility engineering. So visibility engineering is what happens when you stop treating those channels as separate activities and start treating them parts of one credibility system. Because the goal is not to be seen just once. The goal is to build the kind of proof that can be recognized, repeated, and surfaced over and over and over again. Most teams do not need more blog posts or webinars or white papers or case studies or podcast episodes. They need an anchor hub. That is the missing piece in many visibility conversations, because if earned media is the proof you can't buy, it still needs something solid to reinforce it. It needs a home base. It needs a place where you decide what's true about your expertise, and then you prove it so that others want to pick up on it. That is what an anchor hub does. Anchor hub dub also sounds good, but it's an anchor hub, and that's what it does. An anchor hub is a deep, defensible page on your website that functions like a reference entry. It's built around one topic, ideally one question that people actually ask, and it becomes the place that people, the humans, and AI can go to understand how you think, what you mean, what your method is, and what proof you have to back it up. It has clear definitions, it has useful context, it has language people can safely quote, cite, and reuse. It is essentially an evidence library for one thing you want to be known for. This is not just another piece of content. It is not whatever we published last week because someone needed something to share on LinkedIn. It is not a generic services page full of big promises and vague copy. And it is not a random thought leadership article that gets buried in your archives 3 days later. It is your home base. It is the place where you establish what's true about your expertise in a way that's clear, consistent, specific, and backed up. That matters because without that kind of owned foundation, earned media has nowhere meaningful to point. You can land a great byline, podcast interview, or trade feature, but if there is no durable source of truth behind it, no page that deepens, supports, and extends the idea, then the placement has to do all of the work on its own. And that's a lot to ask of one placement. It's a lot to ask of one person who doesn't work for you. And Anchor Hub changes all of that. It gives your team a through line. It gives your experts a lane. It gives every byline, quote, interview, and article something to reinforce. And it gives AI systems a more stable pattern to recognize because they're not just seeing one mention floating around out there. They're seeing a topic, a person, a method, and a body of proof connected across sources. The good news is you don't need 10 of these to start. You need one, just one. Choose one topic where you want to be the obvious answer. Frame it as a question real people actually ask, and then build the best page on the internet for that topic. Not the flashiest page, the most useful, the most citable, the most complete. Once you have that, earned media stops becoming a collection of wins and starts becoming a credibility engine. This is where the distinction becomes very clear. Many teams still treat earned media like a trophy case. You land a great placement, everyone celebrates, it gets shared internally, maybe it goes into the next board deck, someone posts it on LinkedIn, And then the inevitable question becomes, okay, so what's next? Head desk. So the exhausted team moves on to chase the next story. And listen, I get it. That's how most of us were trained to think about earned media. Land the placement, report the win, keep going. The problem is that a trophy case shows what happened. It doesn't necessarily build anything lasting. You get a feature in a trade publication, great. It quotes your executive, links to your website, and everyone is thrilled because this is the best placement you've had all year. But if there is no through line, no connection to a real buyer question, no clear topic you're trying to own, no deeper source of proof behind it, then that coverage becomes one disconnected mention among many. It was real visibility, but it was not engineered visibility. Now, compare the trophy case to a credibility loop. In the stronger version, the team starts with an anchor topic. They build an anchor hub that answers a real buyer's question in depth. They assign a named expert to that topic so the internet is not left wondering who actually knows this. Then they start connecting earned opportunities back to that foundation. A bylined article tackles the same question from a slightly different angle. A podcast interview reinforces the same language and the same point of view. A trade feature quotes the same expert on the same issue. Maybe a creator or newsletter writer picks up the theme and points back to the source. Now the market is starting to see a pattern, and that pattern is what builds credibility. Instead of random wins that create noise, you have aligned wins that reinforce expertise. Instead of a clipbook, you have a system. Instead of a single clear mention, you have repeated signals that tell humans and AI systems that this is the person, this is the company, this is the brand, this is the product or service, this is the framework, this is the answer. That is the difference. A trophy case says, look what we got. Yay, look at us. We win. A credibility loop says, here is what we are known for. And then all of those things start to happen so that you help to achieve goals for the business. And the difference between those two things is not budget or team size or some magical access to better media opportunities. It is connection. It is intention. It is deciding that every channel win should strengthen your owned media foundation rather than living out there on its own. The good news is this does not require a great reorganization or a 6-month strategy deck. You can start this week. First, ask AI about yourself. Go to Chat, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, whatever you use, and do it in temporary chat or incognito mode so it doesn't pull from your history. Then ask the kinds of questions your prospects, journalists, buyers, donors, candidates, or partners would ask before they decide to trust you. Do you show up? Are you recommended? Are you associated with the topic you want to own? Or are the signals thin, inconsistent, or you don't show up at all? Don't panic if the answer is not what you want. Just notice this is your baseline. Second, identify one topic where you want to be the obvious answer. Not 5, not 10, not 3, 1. Choose a real buyer question in the words real people actually use. Not your internal language, not the polished phrase from the messaging document, the way someone would ask it in a Slack channel, type it into Google, or throw it into a chatbot when they need a quick answer. Then ask yourself whether you have a page on your site that clearly answers that question with proof. If not, that is the work you'll do next. And then third, connect your next earned placement to something you own. The next time you land a byline, a podcast interview, a quote in a trade story, or a newswire pickup, ask a simple question. Does this reinforce the same story? Does it point back directly or indirectly? It doesn't actually have to have the link anymore to the topic that we want to be known for. The LLMs are smart enough now, if the content is consistent across platforms, to understand that your anchor hub is the source of truth, even without a direct link. If the placement does reinforce your anchor hub topic, you are now building a credibility loop. You are now building more than a trophy case. If it does not, it may still be a very nice win, but it belongs in that trophy case because it won't work for you while you sleep. And while you're doing all of this, I would make one measurement shift. Stop measuring success by placement counts. Start measuring reuse. Are the same ideas showing up across channels? Are the right experts consistently associated with the right topics? Are you appearing in AI answers for the questions that matter most? Because that is the real signal now, not just whether you got mentioned, but whether you are becoming the answer that keeps showing up. In this environment, the goal is not to collect more mentions. It is to build proof that compounds. Earned media definitely still matters. In many ways, it matters more now than it ever has because it is still the proof you cannot buy. It is still the credibility, third-party credibility you cannot buy. But on its own, it is no longer enough to carry the full weight of discovery, credibility, and trust. Owned media has a role to play too, not as a dumping ground for content, but as the place where you decide what is true about your expertise and then you prove it in a way that others can validate. That is visibility engineering. When owned and earned media work together, you stop creating random visibility and start building the kind of authority that humans and AI systems can recognize, trust, and surface. That is the shift in front of all of us now. And if you're thinking, okay, this is a lot, but how do I make sure my profile, my pitch, my presence, everything actually supports that authority? Never fear, I have a solution. I am hosting a webinar for Quoted on April 30th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and we're going to talk all about this. You can register by going to bit.ly/AprilGini. That's bit.ly/AprilGini, Gini, bit.ly/AprilGini, because the brands and experts who win will not be the ones who are mentioned once. They will be the ones who built the kind of credibility that keeps showing up. If you want more ideas on how to engineer your own visibility, join us in the SpinSucks community. It's a great place to get advice, brainstorm ideas, and build real relationships with your peers. You can find us at spinsucks.com/community. That's spinsucks.com/community. And make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. We're posting tips, how-tos, cheat sheets, and apparently SHIT that I say every week. I'll see you next week.